Hello, and welcome back to Handmade with Holly. My name is Holly Michelson, and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator from Del Mar, New York. If you're new to my channel, I'm excited that you found me and that you're here. And if you've visited with me before for a video, thanks for coming back. I really appreciate it. I've been a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator since 2018, and I just started filming videos in the summer of 2021. But I have some really great ideas to share with all of you, and so I'm excited that you could stop by and learn about them. Today, we're going to be making this really cool card featuring the Butterfly Brilliance stamp set. We'll be using the Stamparatus in order to make this card, and I'm going to show you how to turn this into a pop-up card. So when you open this card up, the butterflies stand up, they pop up in the card. This card might seem like it's difficult, but it's actually super easy. And so I'm going to show you how you can make your own pop-up card, and I have a bonus design that I'll show you at the end using the Beauty of Friendship stamp set. So be sure to stay with me all the way to the end of the video. All right, so in order to get started, I'm going to be using the Butterfly Brilliance stamp set and the coordinating dies. So these dies are called butterfly dies, and look at how many you get. This is a phenomenal set. You get all of these dies. These dies allow you to cut out intricate butterfly designs. And this die is actually a single die, and you can cut out all of these butterflies with a single pass in your Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. How cool is that? We also have some great stamps here that allow us to make some texture, like bricks, dots. This is like stamped concrete. So lots of great options there to play with. I'm going to be coloring the butterfly using my Stampin' Blends, and on the inside I chose to use my watercolor pencils, so I have both of those available. I'll be stamping today using the Memento Tuxedo Black ink, and that's important when you're using the blends and the watercolor pencils with the blender pen so that you don't smear your ink anywhere. And I'll also be using polished pink ink to stamp the sentiment. You'll notice that the Butterfly Brilliance set doesn't come with any sentiments. It's a full-size stamp of just the butterflies. So in order to have a sentiment, I brought in positive thoughts, and I've got this great sentiment here, sending positive thoughts and feel-good wishes. And I'll be cutting that out today using this lovely label Pick-a-Punch. And finally, the designer series paper that we're using as our backdrop, I kind of felt like this looked like motion, wings and flight, is this piece of paper. It actually comes from Celebration, and it's this paper here, beautifully penned. Customers who have a $50 purchase can earn the beautifully penned paper free of charge with any $50 purchase. You get 12 sheets of designer series paper with these beautiful patterns. So you can see this is the darker side of the paper, stripes, vines, flowers. And if you turn it over, you have a lighter side of the paper where we have these waves, more hand pen flowers, and some polka dots. Again, this paper's free of charge. You get 12 by 12 sheets of paper. Can't beat that deal, all for just making a $50 purchase that you wanted to make anyway. So if you purchase the Butterfly Brilliance stamp set on page 106 and the matching dies, you can get them in a bundle, and by purchasing them as a bundle, you'll save an additional 10%. Those are $54.75, which means if you purchase this bundle, you will be entitled to choose anything from the Celebration catalog, including this beautifully penned paper. But hurry, Celebration only lasts until September 30th, 2021. So that is coming up quickly. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with our project. I'm going to start off by preparing my card base. This is an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper cut in half vertically and scored horizontally at 5.5. So you can see that score mark right there. I'm going to go ahead and just use my fingers to bend that in half. And then I'm going to take my bone folder and burnish that crease so that I get a nice flat card. So this piece is about 1/8 of an inch shorter all the way around. We're cutting this piece of cardstock, so it's 5 1/4 by 4, and then it layers beautifully on here. And then next we need our designer series paper, also 1/4 inch shorter. So this is 3 3/4 by 5. So don't worry about the measurements. I'm going to put all of that in the description for you. This part's easy. I'm sure you've done this a bunch of times yourself. Okay. Now that I have adhesive on the back, I'm going to go ahead and put this double matted layer on my card, visually trying to leave equal space on all 4 sides there. And let's bring in our Stamparatus. So just like the die cut out all of the butterflies in a single pass, if you remember I showed you this die meant to cut out all of the butterflies, that means we need a single stamp so that we're sure that the butterflies are in the exact same place every single time, right? So we're gonna go ahead and stamp our butterflies. You could do this with your Stamparatus, which is my preferred method, but if you don't have a Stamparatus, you could use the F block. This F block is large enough for a full-size stamp set. You can see that the butterfly stamp will fit right on there. Why I like the Stamparatus for this project is there's a lot of detail in these butterflies. To me, they kind of remind me of like Audubon drawings where they're pencil or charcoal drawings, and they have a lot of detail, and I want to make sure I get all of the little detail filled in on the butterfly and that it's nice and inky. If I were to stamp these 6 images using the block and I didn't have the stamp fully inked up, there's a chance maybe that I would have some bald spots or be missing some of the shading or stripes or dots, and then it would be difficult for me to line it back up again. But when you're using the Stamparatus, you get perfect alignment every single time. So the Stamparatus is an amazing tool if you are trying to stamp something that's detailed and you're worried that you're going to miss part of the impression. You can just re-ink and do it again. Or it can also be really great if you're trying to make multiples of the same card by figuring out your alignment once, the placement of your stamp and the placement of your paper. You'll be able to just keep changing your paper out and making them again and again. So Stamparatus is a super helpful tool when you're making multiples or something, or especially with a big stamp like this with a lot of detail. I love to use the Stamparatus. So you can see what I've done here is I've put down my piece of paper. This piece of paper is, just slightly bigger than my stamp. I have a 5 by 6 sheet of paper, which is just slightly bigger than the stamp, and I have it magnetized down on my Stamparatus. This is a magnetic surface underneath, and I kind of centered the paper in the page between the left and the right. That way I wouldn't have any difficulty getting stamps here in this hinge area. I kind of like to keep my paper a little bit away from the hinge area. So what I did was I placed my stamp down on the paper in the center, and then I brought my Stamparatus plate over and let it kiss my butterflies. So I'm just going to give them a little press all the way around and make sure that the stamp is adhered and doesn't have air bubbles. And when I lift that up, my stamp is now perfectly placed. And so this is what I mean about the stamp being in the right spot. If I wanted to make multiples, I could just take this paper out, slip another one in between the 1 and the 6, and I would be perfectly ready to go to stamp the next one, and then the next and the next. So one thing that's kind of nice is to put a stamp case underneath the plate for the Stamparatus, and that keeps it level and straight, which makes it a little bit easier to ink. So generally speaking, you have a stamp case handy when you're working with a Stamparatus because you're putting your stamp on it. So I just grab the one that I'm using. And I'm going to go ahead and ink up this stamp. When you're working with a Stamparatus, it's best to flip the ink pad upside down and tap it onto your stamp. I have found with this particular stamp, however, that there's so much detail that it's actually kind of good to lightly scrub. So what I do is I'm lightly moving my ink pad over these butterflies, making sure that I'm getting ink on all of the little intricate lines on my butterfly, including the antenna and the body and whatnot. Now, for this particular project, because we're going to use the die to cut out all these butterflies, if I were to get any stray ink on these edges, it wouldn't matter. Once I use the die to cut the butterflies out, that would all be trimmed off. So I don't even have to worry about being particularly clean about what I'm doing, knowing that I'm only going to be capturing the butterflies. You can see how they get cut out with the die. So I'm going to go ahead now and bring my plate down and give it a press. It's good to put a little bit of weight on it, distribute the pressure around to all of the different butterflies, and then go ahead and lift up. Oh my goodness, perfect impression the first time. How amazing is that? Now, if it turned out that I didn't get some ink somewhere, I could come back in with my memento and just hit a little bit of ink in that area and come back down, and I'm going to get a perfect restamping. I'll try that just so you can see nothing has moved. I didn't get a double impression, any little halo or ghosting. It's stamped in the exact same place the second time around. Now you want to make sure that you clean off your stamp. Memento ink will kind of stain, so I like to clean those fairly soon thereafter. And so I'm just folding up my Stampin' chamois and rubbing it across the butterfly to clean this off. So now that we've stamped our butterflies, I'm going to go ahead and remove the magnets. You want to be careful to keep your magnets separate from each other. They're really strong, and if you bring them close together, they attract one another. They can be kind of difficult to pull apart. That's part of why I have washi tape on mine. It makes it easier. It gives me like a little hang tag to grab them and help me if I need to separate them. And what's also nice is that you can store your magnets right here on the back of your Stamparatus. So that's really handy. Keep your magnets close by. All right, so now what we need is the die, and we're going to go ahead and position the die on our stamped images, making sure that it looks like we've got it in the right position relative to all 6 of the butterflies. And then we're going to want to use some Post-it notes to hold that in place. So I'm going to place maybe 2's probably enough, but for good measure I'm going to go with 3. And just to make sure that my die doesn't move. My Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine is on the table behind me, and my camera doesn't reach that far. So I'm just going to go ahead and be right back. Okay, so now I'm just going to go ahead and remove the Post-it notes. These generally can be used a couple of times, so I'm just going to set those aside for next time. And when I go ahead and remove my butterfly die, all 6 of my butterflies are perfectly cut out. How cool is that? 6 butterflies, 1 stamp, 1 pass through the cut and emboss machine. So excited about that. So now the next is to decide which butterfly or butterflies you want to use on your card front. I used this one before, and I used 3 butterflies on the inside. This one, and this one. And that left me 2 extra butterflies for another project. That's part of how I have a few for right up there. But I could also decide if I wanted maybe even to put 2 butterflies on the front of the card. We're gonna go ahead and take our Stampin' blends and color in our butterfly. This card doesn't even have to be polished pink. You could do it any color you want. I happen to have a bunch of breast cancer survivor friends, and so I tend to make a lot of things in pink. And I'm just gonna go ahead and take my Stampin' blends and color the butterfly to my liking. Now I deliberately used the blends on the big butterfly for the front. I felt like I got a really vibrant impression on that butterfly. It was a great pop of pink in my opinion. You could do it with the new pastels, or you could also do this with the watercolor pencils, whatever is your coloring tool of choice. Now, you probably don't want to sit here and watch me color a butterfly, so I'm going to fast forward the video in just a moment. I'm only just wanting to point out that I didn't really do a lot of blending and shading. I mostly just chose 2 colors and alternated my placement of where I put them on the butterfly. But you can really make this design your own and color it any way that you like. So I'm just going to go ahead and fast forward and finish up the butterflies. So now I have my 2 butterflies all colored, and I can go ahead and give those just a little bend with my fingers, kind of right around the center body of the butterfly, just to get him to be more 3-dimensional, or her, I guess. And I'm gonna go ahead and put these down. Because I'm gonna make this one flat, I'm gonna go ahead and put adhesive on the whole back of this butterfly. This one, I want the wings to pop up, so I'm only going to put adhesive down the center body. I'm going to put the flat one down first, and then the flying one second. Okay, and now the wings have the ability to move a little bit. If you mail it, it's going to fold flat to mail, but if you don't mail it, it can be a nice 3-dimensional card. And we're also going to need to stamp our sentiment. So I'm using this one, Sending Positive Thoughts for Feel Good Wishes. When I'm mounting stamps, I generally will put them on my grid paper in a straight line and then put the block over it so that the stamp gets on the block straight. And I'm going to go ahead and come in with my polished pink and stamp this sentiment. Try to do this in the center because we're going to be cutting off a little bit from each side. Perfect. Okay, and now I'm going to close up my ink and set that aside. I have the lovely labels Pick-a-Punch. No, I don't. Actually, I called it the wrong thing. I have the Treasured Tags Pick-a-Punch from page 149 of the catalog, and we're going to use that to finish off our label. I'm just going to open up my punch and feed my paper into the punch. A little bit easier to turn it over and see what you're doing and press. And then I'm going to take that out and feed it back in the opposite direction, turning it over, making sure it's all the way to the back, and then I'm going to punch again. Now I've got this great tag, and what's so awesome about this punch is you can really make the tag any length that you want it. So I could have had a tag that was this long or even this long. Whatever I want, I'm just basically making the finished edges. The other thing that's really cool about this punch is that you get 6 different designs. So you can put like a 1/2 inch piece of paper, 3/4 inch, or a full inch piece of paper. And based on the width of the paper, you'll either get this label, or the full label. Then you have a whole nother track on the other side, allowing you 3 more widths for a total of 6 different options that you could get out of this Treasured Tags Pick-a-Punch. So that's a really cool tool. There's also another option with this Banners Pick-a-Punch edge where you can make these banner shapes. Sorry, it's a lot of glare there. Or there's a lovely labels with different edges there as well. I don't have that one myself, but 2 of the 3 isn't bad, right? Okay, so now I have my tag and I just need some Stampin' Seal. I'm deliberately not using dimensionals here. Oftentimes I put my sentiment on with dimensionals, but this card is going to get bulky when we do the inside, so I don't want to add any unnecessary bulk to the front. Now we've got our whole front finished, but we still have this inside that we need to work on. So we have more butterflies here. I'm actually going to color these butterflies using my Melon Mambo watercolor pencil. Melon Mambo is a pretty good match for polished pink, even though it's not exactly the same. There isn't a watercolor pencil specifically for polished pink. So I'm just going to go ahead and color, keeping in mind that the harder I press, the deeper the tone I'm going to get. The lighter I press, the lighter color I'll get. So I can actually get 2 different colors of pink using the same pencil. And if it goes quiet and starts to get faster, you'll know I fast forwarded the video so that you didn't have to watch me color all 3 butterflies. Now, when you're coloring with watercolor pencils, you don't have to worry about perfection if you're going to use the blender pen. The blender pen has 2 different tips, a smaller one and a thicker one. And if you come back in over your watercolor pencil, you'll see that it kind of blends the color and smooths it out, so you don't see all of those pencil lines from when you've been coloring. But this also means it's a very forgiving medium, and you don't have to be super perfect about your coloring. When I use watercolor pencils, I generally kind of scribble pretty quickly, and then when I go over it with the blender pen, I get really fabulous results. And it even brightens up those pencils a little bit with the solution that's inside the blender pen. So again, I'll just speed this up while I finish up the 3 butterflies. It just occurred to me that today is September 19th and we are not that far away from Pinktober. So October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, so it's actually a great thing that I'm making these pink sending positive thoughts cards, because October is a great time to raise awareness and reach out to survivors that are battling breast cancer. So I'm excited about these cards. All right, now that we have all of our butterflies, we need to make our pop-up mechanism, and that's as easy as can be. I'm starting with a piece of cardstock here, so 3.5 by 4.25, and we're gonna go ahead and make score lines in this piece of paper to create our pop-up mechanism. For that, I'm gonna bring in the scoring tool. You don't have to use Simply Scored. You could do this on your trimmer. If I'm looking at my trimmer has this light gray scoring blade right here, and I can definitely do it on the trimmer. The reason why I'm using the Simply Scored board today is because the first score mark is at 3/4 of an inch, and that's a little tricky on the trimmer. Like if you're scoring at an inch or more, it's easy peasy on the trimmer, but I felt like the 3/4 inch mark was a little trickier on the trimmer, and it was just easier for me to do it on the Simply Scored board. Also, because of the fact that I have 4 different score lines to make, doing it on the scoreboard, I can set my markers up in advance. If I was making a whole bunch of these cards, my markers would be there and ready to go, and I'd be able to whip these off in no time. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the small end of my stylus in the notch where it's marked at 3/4 of an inch, and I'm just gonna drag my stylus straight back toward me, making my score line. I'm gonna repeat the same thing here. I'm basically doing them 3/4 of an inch apart. So this is at 3/4 of an inch. 3/4 of an inch plus 3/4 of an inch is 1.5. So I did it again at 1.5. Now I'm going to do it at 2.25. And then I'm going to do it one more time at 3. And you'll notice that this last piece, I don't know if you can see that, but I got this scored piece of paper. It's got 4 score lines in it: 3.25, 1.5, 2.25, and 3. And the 3 I just did by sight because the Simply Scored board only comes with 3 markers. I didn't have a 4th one to put in there. And then I'm going to go ahead and clip my stylus tool back here in the bottom. My camera area is too small. This board's kind of big. It's a little bit larger than 12 by 12, but that just clips in there and stores. There's also a nice tray in here where you can store items, including these little markers. You can tuck them away in the drawer. All right, so now that we have this scored, we're gonna go ahead and finger fold it, which means I'm just gonna bend it and press it with my fingers and get the folds started. And then I'm gonna come back with my bone folder and give them a really good crease. We want this to fold super flat and be well creased, because this is the mechanism that is going to make our pop-up. So we're making this square area. We're making this square area inside the card. And then one more. Okay. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna find the short side. So you can see these 4 pieces. These 4 pieces are of equal width, but then we've got this piece that's narrower, and this is the piece that we're gonna tuck in and glue together. It's like the tail that will become our square box, if you will. So I'm gonna go ahead and use my Stampin' Seal. You could also use Seal Plus here. Either one would work. And then I'm going to gently bring this together, making sure to keep all sides square. So you want them to be good, right, 90-degree angles. And when I have it in the right spot, I'm then just going to finger press that closed. A square. So we took a rectangle, we made 4 scores in it, and then we finger folded it, burnished with the bone folder, and then I folded it into a square where I had glued it together. Now where I've glued it together leaves a seam, and we don't necessarily want that visible. When somebody opens up our card, they are going to see parts of this box. So to disguise them from seeing that, we're going to go ahead and make one of these panels the back and one of these panels the bottom. So the two panels that surround our seam are going to be pressed down onto the bottom of the card and to the back of the card. Make sense? So my seam is right here in that back corner. So I'm going to go ahead again and put on my Stampin' seal. And I'm going to do that on both what I consider the back and the bottom. And then let's bring in our card. And we're gonna place this, remember where our seam is, because we're trying to hide that. We're gonna put our seam right up into that binding of the card. You want to get it right up in there, but give it just a little bit of give room so that the card can open and close. You don't want it hanging off over here or hanging off over here. You want to keep it within the card. And when you have it perfectly placed, you can go ahead and finger press that down on the sides. I just sort of sticking my fingers in the hole and finger pressing that down. And now I can fold this flat, hold it with my finger, and I'm going to close the card. And when I close the card, the top inside is going to stick to the adhesive. And when I open it, I now have my pop-up mechanism. So if I want to help work the bend, sometimes I'll press that in once. That kind of helps me work the bend a little bit and kind of ease up the motion of it a little bit, if you will. And so this is the mechanism that's going to make our butterflies pop up. So now we're going to take our decoration, go ahead and decide where we want to place it. So I think it's kind of easy to lay the card like this so that the front is facing down, and just place your butterflies and sort of get an idea how you want them. Do you want them straight? Do you want a butterfly or a few at an angle? How do you want to do that, and get a feel for it? Once you know where your butterflies are going to be, pay attention to where they land on this backing. We can only put adhesive wherever the butterfly is going to touch this backing. So that means no adhesive up here, no adhesive at the top of these butterflies, just along the bottom, okay? So again, I'm using my Stampin' seal. I'm just putting adhesive along the bottom of my butterfly. And I'm going to come in and then place it where I want. Make sure that your butterfly's wings is still within the card. You don't want it hanging outside of the card. You want to keep it inside as a nice surprise. And I'm not pressing these super hard yet in case I need to readjust or fiddle later to get everything in. And in fact, I had to. I needed to shift this one over a little bit. Maybe I'll tilt this one in a different direction. Okay, I think I like that. So now that I like where my butterflies are placed, I'm just going to go ahead and close the card again and give it a press, and that's going to really stick my butterflies to the back. So those are on there pretty good. Now at this point, I can come in and put in a sentiment. Hugs, prayers, love. There we go. And let's bring that polished pink ink in one more time. There she goes, perfect. So now I've got an awesome card of encouragement for a fellow breast cancer survivor. I myself am a 6-year survivor and have lots of friends currently on their journey. So this is my finished card. Great pop-up. I hope you really like that. But I promised you that I would show you another sample, and I will. So this one I made using the Beauty of Friendship stamp set, and it also has coordinating dies that cut out this great tree and the cute cardinal, and even this die here that I used for the thinking of you sentiment. Now the hill, this is a stitched hill. I don't know if you can see that, but this hill is stitched, and these clouds are also stitched. Those dies did not come from the Beauty of Friendship. They actually came from this new die set called Basic Borders. And I used this die in order to make the hill. And I used this die to make the cloud line. And then after I cut out the clouds, I used a little sponge dauber to put a little balmy blue on there and create a little shading. For the tree, I cut it out of basic white, and I used daubers with Cajun craze, pumpkin pie, and garden green to create the fall foliage effect on my tree. This is simply real red, and down here, this is garden green cardstock. These cute little grass shapes actually come from the Turtle Friends stamp set. I just borrowed that one little grass stamp there. Then, if you open it up, on the inside, I have this adorable tree. I don't know if you can see that. I have this adorable tree that pops up with a cardinal sitting in the tree. Again, garden green. This is cinnamon cider for the tree trunk. I sponge daubed on some green for the leaves, and then I stamped using Calypso Coral, and I use this stamp right here to create some foliage on the tree. So there you go, 2 versions of a pop-up card, and I think they're both gorgeous. We've got the one here with the butterflies. I'm going to give this a good crease right there. So we've got these gorgeous butterflies with their floating wings and nice pop-up on the inside. And then we have our fall foliage tree with a lovely tree inside. I haven't decided what I'm going to stamp on the inside yet. I'm going to wait till I send the card and decide what message is appropriate then. I hope you've enjoyed taking a look at how to make a pop-up card and these 2 great examples and learning more about the Stamparatus. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. That helps me and I'd really appreciate it. I'd love for you to leave me a comment and tell me which of the 2 cards is your favorite. Do you like the butterfly card or do you like the tree card better? Also, if you're interested in purchasing any of these products, the Stamparatus, the Butterfly Brilliance stamps and dies, the Beauty of Friendship stamps and dies, or even the Basic Borders, I would love to earn your business. You can visit my online store. There will be a link down below in the comments, or you can go to stampinup.com and search for me by name. My name is Holly Michelson. Thanks so much for joining me. Until the next time. Bye.